So welcome to the state and local advocacy webinar from the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement. And my name is Christina Krost. I am formerly with the Illinois affiliate of Interfaith Power and Light, which goes by the name of Faith in Place. We also have our Indiana and Wisconsin affiliate as well. So I just left that position. I'm starting a new position shortly, but that is how I come to the work in United Methodist Creation Justice Movement. So I'll be your MC for this evening, and I'll do some more introductions here as we get going. But I just want to frame, kind of what we'll be talking about this evening, but a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Please use the chat for your questions, which we will answer at the end of the evening. So if you have questions, or as we go along, if you have questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. Please also, do a quick introduction of yourself in the chat. Tell us where you're located, maybe what conference you're located in, or what state you're located in, and your name. And we would love to be able to see, what the wide variety of places that we inhabit here in the country. And be recording this as well, so that will go on the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement YouTube channel later. So you'll be able to share this information with others later on once that goes live on the YouTube channel. All right. I think that was all of the housekeeping that we had right now, and I'm seeing names and locations enter the chat, so thank you so much for taking a minute to do that. All right, so here's what is on the agenda for the day. We'll do some welcome introductions and prayer, which we just, we'll do prayer in just a second. But we're gonna do some framing. What is the Farm Bill? We're gonna hear from an actual farmer. We're gonna hear what the United Methodist Church says about all this. And we'll have some call to action and some things that we can actually tangibly do toward the end. And then we'll have a time for questions and answers at the end. And so I wanted to, before we go on to the next slide, I'm going to kind of read a word of framing today, kind of as a word of prayer as we get started. And this comes from the Iowa Interfaith Power and Light affiliate, who has written their college student program in the summer, has written what they call an interfaith statement. And I just thought it was really inspiring and empowering, and I wanted to share it with you kind of as a word of prayer, as a word of hope for this evening, and that our young people are leading us well, and here's what they have to say about all this. So listen to this statement. To forge a sustainable future, we believe in empowering people of faith and conscience by uniting religion and science, building resiliency, and working together. We believe in embracing the powerful integration of faith and science by harmoniously combining scientific knowledge and religious beliefs. We gain a profound appreciation for the complexity of the universe. This coexistence allows us to discover hopeful solutions for a sustainable future. As we embark on this journey towards sustainability, we acknowledge the challenges that lie ahead, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Nevertheless, collective climate action and activism can foster a sense of hope within our communities. We believe that nurturing resilience and healing in the face of adversity are vital components of our pursuit. And in this endeavor, we prioritize the creation and maintenance of healthy boundaries, ensuring a harmonious balance in our lives as we champion the cause of climate action. By fostering resilience and hope, we can overcome obstacles and maintain an unwavering focus on cultivating a future built on sustainability. This statement goes on, and I will definitely add this to the chat so that you can see it a little bit later. But the very last sentence I think is exciting. It's, join us in forging a sustainable future for Iowa and beyond by embracing the integration of faith and science, building resilient communities, and harnessing the power of diversity. As people of faith and conscience, we can create a lasting legacy of positive change for the environment. So I received this here this evening as a word of hope from our young leaders who will take on this work after we are gone. So let's move into the rest of our evening. And I want to make first an introduction to our next speaker. So this is Deaconess Irene Damaris. She's the Executive Director of the Iowa Church of Power and Light. She has quite a really bio that with me now. She spent her career working in faith-based nonprofits. She has a passion for working with people as they take their faith and act on social justice issues. And before moving to Iowa in 2018, she was the Associate Director for the Center for Public Theology at Wesley Rochester, DC. And she spent time as an organizing fellow with Faith in Public Life as well. And so we are delighted to have Deaconess Irene Damaris with us today to share with us a little bit of framing about, what is going on with the Farm Bill. So Irene, go ahead when you want me to move to the next slide.
Next slide. Always fun seeing your face, right?
Yeah, probably. Okay.
Oh, awesome. So I'm Irene Damaris. I'm a Methodist deaconess. Feel free to ask questions about that if you are learning that we still exist within our tradition. And I'm thrilled to be with a group of Methodists tonight. So Iowa Interfaith Power and Light, like most of the IPLs, we have a similar mission. Our mission is to empower Iowans of faith and conscience to take bold and just action on the climate crisis. And we come into the Farm Bill space because we have an ag program where we go into rural communities and we talk with groups of farmers, ranchers, and landowners about how they're called to climate action and what's hindering and how you can move forward. And so the next kind of pathway forward with that program would be for us was to dip our toe into advocacy around the Farm Bill. And so that's how I'm here. I am a theologian. I'm not a farmer. You're going to hear from one. But I can tell you why people of faith should care about the Farm Bill. It is a huge sum of money. And a lot of the times, I know I've focused on the 75% that feeds, and that's really important. But there's also this portion of the Farm Bill that deals specifically with agriculture, and that's really important. So, next slide. Sorry, Christina. So what is the Farm Bill? So it's a large package that defines most of our federal farm, food, nutrition, and our rural economic programs. So it's massive. So it just gives what the next 5 years are going to look like for our food and farm systems. It influences what's grown, who grows it, how it's grown or produced, what's done with the products and where they go when they're sold, who can afford and access these products and goods, and how we invest in our rural communities. So the Farm Bill is passed every 5 years. If all goes well, the current Farm Bill runs out end of this month. So we're not looking at a new Farm Bill until next year. So definitely going to be behind the times this year. So next slide. So who writes the Farm Bill? So you have the two bills that are combined to one, essentially. So you have the Senate Committee on Ag, Nutrition, and Forestry working on their version. And then you have the House Agriculture Committee. So we have members of Congress from all over making comments and suggestions. They hear from witnesses. They hear from farm, foods, and rural advocacy organizations. They hear from Big Ag. And that is, I will name as problematic. And they hear from voters like you and people of faith and conscience. Because we have a very unique perspective when it comes to the Farm Bill. Because how many times do you call and talk about ag as a person of faith? It stands out when you talk to your elected officials. So next slide. There's some estimates, 18% of our economy is connected to agriculture. So that being said, being in a state that is hugely influenced by agriculture, this is a really important bill. So we have 2 senators on the Senate committee and 2 of our 4 House reps sit on the ag committees. It's important because building climate smart agricultural practices is going to be pivotal for equity, and a sustainable economy. The next slide so when we talk about agriculture, and you're going to hear from a farmer who's going to be the expert, right? There's so many different ways that we can have climate smart agriculture practices. You'll hear about regenerative farming, which is usually refers to no-till, so you're not tilling your soil, so stuff's coming up and going into the atmosphere and we're losing carbon. That also helps with soil health. Putting cover crops to protect your soil from erosion. Both of those practices help with clean water systems. When you have healthy soil, you put less inputs and nitrate and I shouldn't say ucky stuff, but I'm going to say ucky stuff into our soil. That really does get in our water systems. And Iowa's hurting right now, and we are impacting the Gulf of Mexico with our egg practices. Livestock, we should be doing more regenerative stuff of having our livestock roam the land and pay for eco-based services. These are all things that put together can have a big impact on climate. So, but you're going to hear from a farmer. I'm going to keep saying that. So what do we want in an equitable farm bill or a faithful farm bill? So we're going to go over a 7-point platform. There was a group of us in the Midwest that spent 2 full days together online on Zoom to put together this platform. And I am proud to have represented Iowa, and I am proud to have represented the only faith group in these conversations and uplifting the stories that we hear through our programs. So the first point on the platform is we believe that we need to increase equitable and just land transition. So supporting land succession that helps farmers retire and provides access to new beginning and historically marginalized farmers to get started. Land is going up in price, and part of that is because, big corporations are buying land. And another is, unfortunately, this is retirement plan, and it's expensive to retire. And this also encourages smaller and more sustainable models of ag to take a place of the big corporate farms. That is a huge issue. Next slide. So another is supporting the development of our rural economies and communities in ways that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So helping our communities go towards a clean energy future. Under the USDA, there's an entire department, and each state has them, called rural development. So this increases programs for affordable housing with efficient energy, heating, cooling, growing the EV charging infrastructure. Yes, the bipartisan, I believe, Infrastructure Act had EV charging stations at every 55 miles of interstate. That does not help our rural communities. Supporting hospitals to transition to renewable energy, and that's really important for sustainability of our rural hospitals, which are taking huge hits right now. Creating walkable and bikeable spaces, encouraging green infrastructure, and technical assistance for easier and faster USDA funds. The USDA is usually understaffed. Next slide. Supporting and expanding local food systems by increasing food sovereignty and ensures the ability of communities to produce, procure, and distribute high quality and nutritious foods. This is increasing opportunities for people to step into and create local food systems and have these careers that are sustainable and they can pass on to future generations, increasing our markets, funding for farmers markets. So a place to sell for small producers, increasing meat producing, meat processing, and more heirloom grain processing, so that we can have, I know where my vegetable came from. I can go to our local grocery store. It probably came from California or Mexico. And so building systems so this is affordable, sustainable, and we don't have to import so much food. Iowa feeds the world. We don't feed ourselves. We import most of our food. So next slide.
Oops. Hold on.
It's an important one.
There we go.
There are a lot of rural churches that can take advantage of rural development funds. I think it's under $10,000, 10,000 people where you can take advantage of those funds. So just throwing out there. So shifting power, funding, and resources towards more beneficial practices that promote ecosystems and human health. That's kind of what I was talking about, going towards regenerative farming, climate smart. So this is opposing funding and programs that further incentivize large-scale industrial agricultural systems. And approaching to animal production, such as confined animal factory operations, CAFOs, monocropping, so just having the same crop over and over when time and time again, and it's been proven crop rotation is vital. Tillage and practices with high chemical inputs. So this is a really important part because we incentivize corn and soy. So when you are taking risks in farming, if you farm for 40 years, that's 40 risks, 40 chances. It's safer to go and get a subsidy instead of stepping out and trying something new. Younger farmers are trying something new. Next slide. We believe an equitable farm bill can accelerate the transition to renewable energy. Easier access to funds from USDA programs that increase wind, solar, geothermal, energy efficiency, and battery storage on farms in our rural communities. Easier access is the huge point. When we're trying to figure out all the stuff, it's hard. So if we can make it easy, people take advantage of it. Next slide. Move conservation funds from the IRA to the permanent farm bill funding baseline. So this shifts power to farmers and people in our rural communities away from consolidated power and corporate control in agriculture and food systems. This is going to be a battle piece. I'm just going to name it right now. In updates I've heard about the farm bill, this is a back end conversation at least in the Senate. I had Senator Grassley's staff tell me point blank, he doesn't believe in this and he's going to fight it. Same thing coming from different representatives, especially our Republican colleagues. But what it does, it increases what we have, right, to do conservation. And so that will just keep building on more and more farm bills. So we just have this bigger base to provide funding for eco-based services, because incentivization is, unfortunately, capitalism is important. Next slide.
Oh, for heaven's sake, hold on.
No worries. They're very pretty slides.
They're lovely. Yes, thank you.
So I think the next one is the timeline.
Hope you're right. That one.
So as Christina's going through the slides, I will later put a link in the chat. Iowa IPL hosted a virtual people's hearing on the Farm Bill, and we had each of these points on this platform. We had a speaker, so we had Farm Bill 101, we had more of a policy wonk talking about IRA funding, we had the president of the Iowa Farmers Union, and a bunch of farmers that we work with. So if you're curious, I will put the link there if you want to further educate yourself. Like we said, Farm Bill's its final countdown for this Farm Bill. So it expires on September 30th. So timing of Farm Bills can be wonky, as you can see below. I think we're going to be lucky to see it at the beginning of next year because they're really going to have to deal with the debt ceiling. And it's just, things are going on. I mean, if you're following the House of Representatives, you know, things are interesting there. So anyways, that's my portion on this. It's going to be more important to hear from a farmer, but it was great being able to share this Farm Bill platform that I put a lot of heart into.
Well, thank you, Irene, for giving us kind of the framing of what's going on with the Farm Bill. We appreciate it. It's not that we hear that it's more important to hear from a farmer. It's equally important to hear from a farmer. So we do appreciate your work and your framing. And so I will, though, now introduce Farmer Phoebe, or Phoebe Gooding, who is the program and organizing director at Toxic Free NC, or North Carolina, and is also a farmer and owner of Hawk's Nest Healing Gardens. And Phoebe leads the Just and Sustainable Agriculture program for Toxic Free North Carolina. She has a Master of Science in Environmental Studies, and her love for nature started in her youth. But over the past couple of years, she's been working to support environmental justice communities in their fight against the toxic chemicals that plague them, whether from polluting facilities or in equitable food systems. In this holistic work toward justice, she has brought together her love for the earth and her love for the people. So Phoebe's small farm, Hawk's Nest Healing Gardens in Durham, North Carolina, is where she's growing organic veggies and herbs to heal the soil, our bodies, and our communities. As a biracial Black woman and mother of two, she holds racial justice and equity at the forefront of all that she does for our collective liberation now and for future generations. So we are so thankful to have Phoebe on with us today, and I'm going to spotlight Phoebe so we can see Phoebe. All right, and so Phoebe is just going to talk. You know what? I'm afraid if I stop sharing my screen, I will never be able to find the slides again. So we can see you spotlit, Phoebe. Phoebe, will you tell us about your experiences?
Sure. And okay, let me see. Okay. Well, yes. Thank you everyone for having me. I was hoping to take a little the slide break and see everyone's faces. I know it's hard in the Zoom world for us to come together, and it's nice to sometimes, but I also understand that technology is challenging. And so we're going to do what we can. So thank you for having me. What I wanted to ask, and I can kind of scroll through and see, but folks can raise hands or raise their hand with the reaction button. But are there any other farmers on this call tonight? Or you could put it into the chat if you're a farmer. Okay, what about folks who have had farmers, have had farmers in their family? Okay, I see a couple hands going up now. Okay, great. Okay, what about anybody who has a garden and grows food? Okay, I see some more hands. Great. Okay, what about, oh, okay. All right, we're all together now. What about anybody who eats? Who eats? Okay, great. Everybody should be raising their hand. I'm pretty sure you eat, Mel. So that is to say that we are all impacted by the Farm Bill, okay, because we all eat. So everybody is impacted by the Farm Bill. I really appreciated Irene's slides about, and for folks of faith, what, how the Farm Bill relates to you, or how you relate to the Farm Bill and why it's important. And I really appreciated those priorities that you set up too. So I'll just, I think there was an introduction already. Toxic Free NC is where I call my desk job. And then my husband and I have an urban farm. So our farm looks nothing like those pictures that we saw of the big Iowa farms. We have an urban farm just outside of Durham, North Carolina, and it's an organic urban farm, and we do everything by hand, and it's still a lot of work to farm on an acre of land and produce food, and especially in our changing climate. A couple things about me is that I work with my work with the at Toxic Free. I host a Women of Color Farmers Network. I see that as a way that I can make sure that some of the most marginalized farmers are getting opportunities and resources, and that I see it as a solution to make sure to keep the sustainability of those farmers and be able to keep them on the land and keep them growing as small farmers that are all growing, either natural, pesticide free, not necessarily certified organic, but are growing healthy food for their communities. So we see that as a solution away from our industrial agricultural system. And that's what a lot of my work is about. Keith invited me here tonight. Thank you so much. And we are part of the North Carolina Food Systems Advocacy Coalition. So we get together with folks all around North Carolina to do advocacy work. So our focus has been the Farm Bill, and we also have three representatives in our state who are in the House Ag Committee. And then just to say, like on Saturday, I'm going to go join the CAFO roundtable. I heard Irene talk about CAFO's centralized or combined animal feeding operations. So these, huge swine farms, hog farms, could be cattle, could be poultry. And we're going to tell the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality that they need to protect people and the community surrounding the CAFOs when they update their permits, which also will last for 5 years, like the Farm Bill. So in what I want to just bring to you with the Farm Bill, I really did appreciate those priorities and have some resources I'll share. There's a few different platforms of folks that are working on the Farm Bill. So National Sustainable Ag Coalition, and they have a Farm Bill platform and priorities. I'm actually a board member of RAFI USA, Rural Advancement Foundation International. We have a Farm Bill platform. And then North Carolina, our Food Systems Advocacy Coalition, we have a Farm Bill platform. Well, we have priorities, I would say. And then who else Heal Food Alliance also has, and they really overlap very much with what Irene said. But I would say for myself as a farmer, I'll break it down into 2 categories, and I'll just say that those 2 categories are justice and climate. So the things I'm really advocating for the Justice for Black Farmers Act. This is a comprehensive bill to address historical discrimination, to establish an independent civil rights oversight board to protect remaining Black farmers from land loss, which is really important, to restore lost land, to create a farm conservation corps for training, to empower HBCUs and advocate for Black farmers and assist socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. So we know that Black farmland has been lost at, incredible rates. We went from, we've lost probably 98%, I think is what the number is, about 98% of Black farmland from the 1920s until now. And those are, from a lot of things that have happened that are just things that have happened around ways of land grabbing, really. And even, the story around, we hear the story around the Great Migration a lot, right? And people moved up north for jobs, but something that, some folks have talked to me about is there was also a lot of push because that was part of the land grabbing and taking. And so there was also what we could maybe think about as being forced to move and forced to leave the lands. So sharing that story that I don't think gets told that often. And then the other thing I would say in terms of the Farm Bill is talking about climate. And as a farmer, I talk about it in the way of adaptation and mitigation. So I think one of the priorities I saw earlier was around, carbon sequestration. So we need healthy soils. And we need practices that are going to not emit so much greenhouse gas emissions. So agriculture is a driver of climate change. Our agricultural system, the way it is now, industrial agriculture, is a driver of climate change. About 20% of the worldwide greenhouse gases is coming from the industrial agricultural system. And I think, Irene was talking about the loss of soils, right, and where they're going and ending up. So that goes with the fertilizers, and that's, adds all this extra nitrogen to our oceans, et cetera. So causing all of this domino effect of problems. But Shelley Pingree, she's in Maine. Actually, she's what I believe she is the only certified organic farmer in the Senate, maybe in the House and Senate. But so she introduced the Agriculture Resilience Act. And so this act will increase investment in agricultural research, improve soil health, ensure farmland preservation and viability, support the transition to pasture-based livestock, and promote on-farm renewable energy, and initiatives to reduce food waste. So there's some other marker bills that definitely we're supporting, but I just to think about it in those ways, I think is really easy to break it down. We want justice, and we need to have climate mitigation, and for farmers we need tools for adaptation, because we are in it. We're going to deal with it. We're already dealing with it. And even my husband and I are like, oh well, hey, the hibiscus grew really great in the heat and sun. Maybe we should just keep growing more hibiscus. So we're looking at what grows and what we can keep growing. And the other big part of the climate is the climate challenges is water. So for all of us to be able to get at this point, we have to have irrigation systems, and making it to where farmers can access those systems easily and get the infrastructure on our farms. We can't really depend on the rain in the same way. So that, and then a couple other things I'll add. I know I don't have a whole lot of time. One other piece that's been a challenge that we've personally faced is getting credit. And so there's a Fair Credit Act that has been sent around, and what happened, our story with my husband and I, our story is that we applied for a FSA microloan, and in the end we were discouraged by the loan officer from trying to apply for it. So we never actually applied. We never hit the button because we were discouraged. And in my gut feeling, I always felt there was something wrong with that. And it was about a year later when a friend I was working with, who's in the coalition, said, in the Pigford cases and everything that happened with all of the discrimination lawsuits of Black farmers, discouragement was the number one thing that came up. And so we actually have standing on the court case, and for to not block essentially the first round of the Justice for Black Farmers Act, which has been being held up in courts. But really, it's just to share the story, because it's that didn't happen to us 50 years ago, right? Or 100 years ago, because I'm not that old. That happened to us 3 years ago. That's still happening. And so that's why it's really important that we're fighting for justice in the Farm Bill, making sure that right now we're putting the money into the programs, and we want these programs there, but we have to ensure that they go to the most marginalized farmers, and making sure they get them, and communities, I'll say too, rural communities, etc. And the last thing I'll leave you with a quote from Margaret Crome-Lukin. She's Rafi's policy director, and I love what she says, is that The Farm Bill is a once every 5 years occurrence, but our work on it is ongoing. And that's kind of what I want to just leave with everyone tonight, that it is, we're going to come back around to this in 5 years, but we have to keep going from now until then and even further. And this is just, we're getting little tips of the iceberg in these different conversations. And even once it passes, we still have to, that's the advocacy. You have to stay on the folks. We can't just vote them in and then that's it, right? So even after once the bill passes, we still have to say, like, what's happening? Are folks really getting what they're, what they're supposed to, and where's this almost $1 trillion going? So, yeah. So thanks so much for having me, and really appreciate it. And I think there was a question maybe or two. And I'm not sure if we have time for those or we can come back to them.
Yeah, I do see a question. Yeah, I think we'll come back to those at the end. That sounds like a good idea, but we want to thank you so much for joining us. Your work is critical. Actual feeding of people is, very critical work. But we have others on here too who do other parts of the system. So we're going to hear from a little bit a different perspective here in just a moment. So let's see, let me move this spotlight and add a different one. Here we go. All right, and let me see if I can get the slide back up, y'all. I'm hopeful. Oh, whoa, I did it. Don't clap, but I just want you all to know that I did it. Okay, so I would like to introduce you now to Becca Edwards, who is the Climate Action Fellow at Texas Impact and the United Methodist General Board of Church and Society. Becca Edwards joins Texas Impact after completing a master's in divinity at Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary. She's a chair of the Mercy and Justice Committee at First United Methodist Church of Austin, and is a certified deacon candidate in the Capital District of the Rio, Texas Annual Conference. So Becca is going to tell us a little bit about what the United Methodist Church says about all of this. So Becca has a few minutes to share with us that. Becca, would you like me to take the slides down, or do you want to?
No, this is fine.
Okay.
You can look at two of me. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. The General Board of Church and Society of the United Methodist Church supports a farm bill that promotes the well-being of people and the planet. Programs and policies that curb hunger and malnutrition, support vibrant agricultural economies, and promote the sustainable use of natural resources must be prioritized as part of a comprehensive farm bill. We support the following principles for the Faithful Farm Bill. First, because taking care of our neighbors is central to our faith, we support protecting, expanding, and strengthening programs that reduce hunger, address food insecurity, and improve nutrition in the United States, especially SNAP and other anti-hunger programs that put food on the table. Second, our faith teaches us that caring for the earth means protecting the entire web of life. So we support strengthening policies and programs that address climate change, such as food waste reduction, cutting the agriculture industry's greenhouse gas emissions, and conservation and protection of natural resources. Policies to end hunger and regulate agriculture in the U.S. must align with our goals to address climate change. The Farm Bill should protect conservation funding, increase funding for programs encouraging proven sustainable ag practices, and support research into the adoption of renewable energy. Third, we urge Congress to honor and protect all people's sacred worth and dignity. We especially support programs designed to uplift and include Black, Indigenous, and other farmers of color who historically have been excluded from government programs that offer resources to farmers. The 2023 Farm Bill must be designed with a lens of equity and inclusion. Fourth, we urge Congress to provide a fair and effective farm safety net that allows farmers, farm workers, and producers in the United States and around the world to earn economically sustainable livelihoods. As United Methodists, we believe that labor has a sacred bond with dignity of all people. We lament abuses of people and the planet as a result of industrialized agriculture and urge Congress to strengthen protections against corporate power abuse and establish fair market rules. Our holy scriptures instruct us to ensure that everyone may live with dignity and the opportunity to recognize their full potential. United Methodists ask Congress to use this opportunity to protect the dignity, health, and safety of those working on the land and all aspects of the food production system. We call for Congress to act with a spirit of generosity and abundance when designing nutrition programs like SNAP. And finally, given the far-reaching impacts agriculture stands to make on our Earth's climate, we urge Congress to weave climate change mitigation policies through all aspects of the Farm Bill. And that's
Okay. You, Becca. So, as you've heard, the United Methodist Church, through our social principles, kind of can hold our social principles and what we know about Scripture, and then what we're seeing in the Farm Bill, and be able to say, here are the things that, here's how we're going to live out the faith that we say that we have, in these policies. And I very appreciate the, very clear, guidelines on what the Methodist Church says about what should be in a Farm Bill. That is incredibly helpful. I would say that more than likely the General Board of Church and Society will have those talking points, available to folks, or have those things out either in a petition form or something like that here very shortly. So never fear if you did not catch all of that. You will see that in writing here, very, very shortly, I think in the coming days and weeks. Is that accurate, Becca? Yes.
yes,
Okay.
We'll have a sign-on letter shortly.
Very good. And the reason for that, again, is that the deadlines for this Farm Bill are screwy. And so, we're trying to find times where we'll have the most impact with our legislators. And so folks on the ground in DC and elsewhere, have a really good sense of what that timing is. And so that's why there's kind of staggered approaches to when these things are going out. So I very much appreciate you sharing that with us. Let's now, so you heard a little bit from that about SNAP benefits. And so Mel is going to come off mute here for a minute and preface for us a little bit more about SNAP benefits and a legislator who really cares about that and what that has to do with the Farm Bill. So Mel, can you give us like a 2-second introduction to this clip?
I will certainly do that, but can I respond to one thing Phoebe said about methane and unmitigated methane emissions from agriculture? Agriculture contributes more to methane pollution than even oil and gas production does. And so that is very, very unknown, but it is methane produces more we produce more from agriculture of methane. You may have heard earlier this summer, a dairy farm in the Texas Panhandle, methane explosion killed 15,000 cattle. 15,000 head of cattle died in that methane explosion because the methane was unmitigated, it was not captured, it was not reused. So this is something that we really need to address, and there are intersections between methane, agriculture, oil and gas, and climate change. Jasmine Crockett is a legislator from Texas. She represents the 30th district, which is South Dallas primarily, which is a food apartheid area. And one of the things that she, as a member of the Agriculture Committee, is very invested in is in retaining and improving SNAP benefits So thank you, Becca, for mentioning SNAP. Jasmine, I got to know her when she was a member of the Texas House of Representatives, and she is she's a fireball. She is just really, really on top of things. She apologizes that she can't be with us tonight. She had a previous commitment, but she sent along this video clip for us to view. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, so we will view, this is about a 4-minute clip about, why SNAP benefits are so essential to the Farm Bill and to her district in particular. So let's take a listen, and I'm hoping the sound works.
One of those Farm Bill rookies is Jasmine Crockett, a Democrat representing an urban district in Dallas, Texas. As she has big goals for her first Farm Bill as a member of Congress.
As a Texan, number one, I got to make sure that those that are producing the food in the state of Texas, that they are able to do their jobs. We know that we've heard a lot of stories about their struggles as relates to access to water and the extreme climate conditions. In addition to that, I want to make sure that we protect SNAP benefits. And finally, I want to make sure that those that are living in food deserts have access to fresh foods.
You mentioned SNAP being one of your Farm Bill priorities, and we've seen quite a bit of discussion on SNAP and nutrition policy generally already this summer with passage of the debt ceiling deal, some language in there, including some changes, and time will tell if House Republicans or the CBO is right in terms of whether that increases or decreases enrollment. But some folks are still kicking around the idea of maybe looking for additional efficiencies, potentially some cost savings within that program. I say all that to ask you, can a Farm Bill that includes some cost savings within the nutrition title still be passed with bipartisan support, in your opinion?
Absolutely not. I don't think that it benefits anyone if we start cutting SNAP benefits and the access to SNAP. What most people don't recognize is that it's an ecosystem. Our producers need to make sure that they are able to anticipate how much money is going to be out there as they are planting. In addition to that, we know that our grocery stores, they need to anticipate what is their revenue going to look like. So it's not just those recipients, it's everyone that's a part of that ecosystem. And so I think that there will be pushback, not just from those of us that care about the recipients that honestly need to just eat, but also those that are farming, also those that are ranching, also those that are selling these foods.
You also talked about food stamps. I want to circle back to that because a lot of times, folks hear the concept of a food desert and they imagine a very rural community, maybe an hour's drive to the nearest grocery store, but you've been very outspoken about the existence of some of these food deserts in urban and suburban areas. What do you think is the role of the federal government in addressing the existence of these food deserts and helping people that might live in them?
Absolutely. So we are currently in the process of working on a bill that would allow for co-ops to actually access capital, so that if it's a for-profit organization that they are trying to rely on some big grocery store chain to come in, that's not coming, they can still have access to fresh foods. And that's what we need to do. No one should go hungry in this country. No one should say, I don't know how I'm going to access food. And honestly, we can bring down our overall cost of healthcare if we just make sure that people have better access.
For those that might not be as familiar with the issue and maybe grew up in rural America or are more experienced with that, they think, well, gosh, in a city, you're so close to everything. There's so many options all around. How does that definition of food deserts, that rural-centric definition, based on experiences within your district and other places that you traveled, how does that rural-centric definition maybe miss the mark?
The majority of people that are in rural America, they actually have access, say, to a vehicle. And so they're able to drive. And so what is far in rural America is not necessarily the same definition in urban America, where we have a lot of people that actually are not accessing vehicles. And so what happens is, for them, it's a matter of, can I walk to a grocery store? Can I catch a bus to the grocery store? And a lot of times that's not a reality without, say, having to grab a couple of buses to get to that grocery store. So this is all about making sure that we have access to the foods. And unfortunately, people don't understand that in inner city urban America, a lot of times, specifically my kiddos, are actually eating whatever is at the local convenience store or the local gas station, which is so problematic. They're not getting nutritious foods. They're getting the junk food, the things that are not allowing them to develop the way that they should be able to develop and learn the way that they need to learn in school.
Well, looks like that is the end of the video. So let me move on to the next slide, if that works. All right. So that was Representative Jasmine Crockett in Texas, telling us a little bit about the differences that she sees in her communities and why the SNAP benefits are really so critical to being not gutted in this next farm bill. So I think the thing that many of us are wondering now is, so what do we do about all this? We've heard about what a good farm bill should do. We've heard about what a farm bill does. We've heard about who is responsible for the farm bill, but what we haven't touched about yet this evening is what we can do with it. And so we have some opportunities for advocacy this evening that I want to share with you, if I can get the slides to work. So I wanted to share in my former position as the senior policy coordinator at Faith in Place, we worked with a coalition of folks to bring one of our representatives to one of these farms locally in Illinois that does some excellent work and who had some real opinions about the farm bill as well. And so this was Representative Nikki Budzinski. She is on the committee from the Illinois 17th District. And she came and she spent an entire afternoon at a farm in Illinois that is doing, phenomenal work. And she listened and she had some ideas and had some suggestions as well for, things that we could be working on in our communities. We also had a state senator join us at that visit as well, so that, there are certainly things that can be done at the state level as well to promote regenerative agriculture and help our food systems. But tonight we're talking more at the national level, of course, but there are plenty of things that you can do at the state level too. And so I include that picture just to say, you would be surprised at how many legislators do really care about this deeply, and if invited on a farm tour, might actually come. So that's one thing that we might be able to do as people of faith and as people who are advocates. Talk to your representatives if you have a relationship with them and see if they'll come and see local farm. Here is another thing that you do this evening, and after I stop sharing this screen, I will put in the chat. There is a petition about what a just and equitable farm bill would look like. This is from Faith in Place, the Faith in Place Action Fund. Again, my former employer, but that's the Illinois affiliate, Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin affiliate of Interfaith Power and Light. So we have a petition here where if you go to that link, it will populate a letter that you can send to your representatives. It will do all the work for you. You just need to type in your name and your address. And so that is another way that we advocate with our legislators, letting them know that, here are the just and equitable things we want to see in a farm bill. If your legislator is on the Ag Committee, great, send them this petition. If your legislator is not on the Ag Committee, that's okay. Still send them this petition because they talk to each other, whether they're in the Ag committees or not, and they can go talk to their friends across the aisle or their friends, in their caucus and say, "Hey, I'm getting a lot of emails about this farm bill. How's that going? What's going on? What can we, here's what I'm hearing from my constituents." And so your advocacy here really does. So doing a petition is one thing you can do. And as I mentioned, you will likely see petitions coming from United Women in Faith. You will see petitions and letters like this coming from the General Board of Church and Society. Your state affiliate of Interfaith Power and Light may have a letter like this. I'm just sharing the one that I had access to today. But if you are on the mailing list for these other United Methodist entities, you more than likely see more information, more petitions coming out, more calls to action around this here very soon. The next thing you can do, I will kick it to Irene to share just a little bit more about what this phone script is all about, and tell us what to do there.
So my Gen Z staff had a lot of fun with this post. This is MJ Notheti. So we wanted to create, as I said, the Farm Bill's going to be expiring at the end of this month. So we just wanted to keep iterating that people of faith and conscience care about this. And so and sometimes you need a phone script. So we created something that you're welcome to use. I put a link in there saying, just your name, where you're from. Please share your faith community, your place of worship. Because that really, like I said, stands out. So this is just a series of action alerts that we have had. I've been to DC and talked to all our legislators. So please use this. Our action alert is Iowa specific, but we will be having more action alerts, including we're going to be writing an interfaith prayer that we send to all of our representatives on the Ag Committee during markup. Just to keep getting the attention and saying like, no, there's a big group. There's like 1.7 million adult Iowans identify as a person of faith and conscience. So, and that's just Iowa. So it's a powerful thing to let people know, like you're doing this from a place of faith.
Amen. And I've done advocacy in DC as well. I find that when I open with, this is my name, this is where I live, and I know I'm a person of faith, and this is where I worship. That really, I think, hammers home some points here that, I'm not only, representing myself when I'm in a meeting like that, but my entire house of worship usually, is maybe not always in agreement about everything, but, usually we are, in agreement that hungry people should eat, and that we should care for our creation. So that is very powerful. So we are coming to the end of our slides here tonight. So if I'm not mistaken, I think our very last slide is the Q&A slide. So I need to stop sharing so I can see your faces. Before I do that, I need to drop a link. So let me stop sharing my screen. There. And I will, as promised, share the link to the Faith and Place petition. But as I'm blabbering here for a moment, if you have questions, please get them typed in chat. I will go through and get them here in just a minute, and we'll feed these questions to any of our speakers who you might have a question for.
I don't have a question. I wanted to just add something, if that's okay. I don't know if maybe we lost our host. Oh,
yeah, her host is missing. She had a bad connection. So I'd say go for it, Phoebe.
Okay. There's one thing to add. I'm not sure if this really came up, but something to just make sure we recognize is like who's missing from the Farm Bill, and labor is missing from the Farm Bill. That's a big piece of our food system. And so a lot of the work we do is we advocate with farm workers, and they're on the front lines of a lot of the challenges of being in the agricultural sector, whether it's being sprayed by pesticides, not having fair pay or housing, and not being treated with dignity. So we don't have anything about farm labor is not covered in the Farm Bill, and that's by design. That is done on purpose. And so that's something that folks are really wanting to push for. And, that's something that I just want to make sure to touch on and make sure that we also think about like what's missing and who is missing and who's not being represented and treated fairly. So thanks.
Well, I will say that there are a number of legislators who are actively looking to totally eliminate SNAP benefits. And we need to reach out to them and advocate for them. One thing that really hasn't been mentioned is the interconnectivity between the justice issues that are involved here. And we're looking at not only agriculture, but we're also looking at climate and their healthcare justice issues, their racial justice issues, their economic justice issues. All of these justice issues are interconnected and can't be separated one from the other.
I think you said it the best. It's 9 o'clock my time, East Coast Eastern Standard Time. So I'm gonna go and just make sure my family has what they need tonight and head to bed soon.
Thank you, Phoebe.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Keith, for inviting me. And I do really appreciate all the energy for doing all the right things.
I want to say something on that. Is there value doing advocacy now? And I think it always is, Paul. And especially because like we need to keep remembering this is happening, because I don't want to say there's a danger of like forgetting it's happening, but like they keep punting and punting and punting. So reiterating and inviting our legislators in. I'm in a red state. I know they tell me, but I've been building the relationships with like the legislative assistants. They know who I am. And that is building up over years, right? Even though it might not be like Grassley's definitely not going to want to increase money, right? Neither's Joni Ernst. But I have a good relationship with Ernst's egg guy, and the guy in Grassley's office I see and had a good relationship, and now my new representative was from that office. So it's the interweb that's going to help you with other issues beyond this, because when you're inviting and you're not attacking, you know, we're people of faith. We need to be inviting in, not excluding, right? And so I know it's not super radical. And I have friends that get really confused in seminary how I ended in this role, but like it's inviting in always, and that's the priority. So that's my 2 cents.
I think in advocacy, we need to stress our faith perspective, but we also need to call out the faith perspective of the representatives themselves, remind them of what their faith tradition says about these issues.
The thing that Phoebe said that I want to double down on is this is a 5-year advocacy process, not a 5-month process. And that things like funding for CSP, a conservation program, or rural energy programs, those funds are not getting where they need to go. And so as part of the process is not only getting a farm bill, but when we get the farm bill, making sure the funds get where they need to go. And in North Carolina, 85% of our farmers have been turned down for EQIP programs. And it's 70 some odd percent in Iowa. So if we do the work of getting the bill and getting the funds, but the money doesn't get there, that's why it's a 5-year process of making sure what we ask for happens and preparing for the next bill. It's until the kingdom comes, we got work to do.
Well, it looks as though we're not going to get Christina back. I'm certainly not on admin here, but I've done enough Zoom meetings. Unless anyone's got anything else to say, I think we can probably all say goodnight and sign the petition and start doing our advocacy work and see if we can make something good come out of this. So I'm gonna sign off, and lovely to see all